What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the final episode in the trilogy of me going home. My 3-video series chronicling the 3 areas that I considered home over the last several years of my life. Before we get started with today's video, I want to let you guys know that at the conclusion of this video, I'm going to have a couple announcements on the future of this series and the future of the podcast as a whole, and also my future moving forward with my life. So stay tuned to the end for that. Today's video brings me to a location that over the years, especially since leaving here in 2019, I actually have gained a sense of disdain for. Now, in my previous video, I spoke about how I'm not a fan of Johnson City anymore. And the only reason I'm not a fan of Johnson City is because Johnson City is, I feel, as I explained, has fallen to the wayside. But luckily, New York State, the town of Union, the village of Johnson City, and the New York State government are trying their best to bring Johnson City back to, not necessarily to its roots, but back to a livable, I guess you could say, habitation for the people of the southern tier. But this particular area, the only reason I've gained disdain for it is because of the fact that when you listen to the news, wherever you live, there is always at least one article about this area that's always bad, whether it be a shooting, a stabbing, a drug bust, a vehicle incident, whatever. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate, having been a resident of this area for so long, turning to my news outlets and all I hear is stabbing this, shooting that, drug overdose this, drug bust that. I don't like that. And it's turned me away from this area very heavily. So much so that in the process of me doing this video, I'm going to try to be extremely careful as possible, just so that nothing happens to me or anybody else. And I'm also going to try to make this video brief, not necessarily brief, but I'm going to try to do it as much as I can. With all of that being said, I'd like to tell you guys where I am stationed today. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this is the final installment in my trilogy of going home. And I decided to pick this area last because, unfortunately, it is the place that over the last 32 years of my life, somehow I found myself spending the most time. And that place would be the city of Binghamton. Now, a little bit of a backstory about Binghamton. Binghamton was named after its founder, William Bingham, who came here in the 1700s and owned a parcel of land that was about 10,000 acres that he had purchased from the towns of Union and Shenango. It was settled in 1800. It was incorporated as a village in 1864, and was incorporated as a city in 1897 or something like that. Forgive me if I'm wrong on my dates. I didn't really brush up with enough time, for it to stick in my head. But obviously, it's incorporated as a city, which means it's pretty much its own entity. And as of the 2020 census, the population of Binghamton was 47,963 people, which is pretty damn close to 500,000 or 250,000. So there's a lot of people in Binghamton, a lot of people. And over the 32 years that I've been on this planet, I happen to, I guess you could say reluctantly now, I happen to have been one of those people. Obviously, over the 32 years, the population has changed. Most of the time, it seemed to have gone up, and most times it's gone down. Obviously, with the changing times, there is a lot less, I guess you could say, I guess you could say there's a lot more residency here than there is business. But the one good thing I could say about Binghamton is that Binghamton still has a lot of businesses in the area that allow it to bring in residential revenue, commercial revenue, and financial revenue. Now, to tie myself into the history of Binghamton, I first came here, well, I guess you could say I've been coming here since I was born, but not permanently. I first resided here all the way back in 2004. Yes, in 2004. And then I left here in the summer of 2006. So the first time I was here, I only spent like 5 years, or I only spent like 2 years. After that, we moved out to Shenango Forks, and then somehow, in the whole time that I was in Shenango Forks, I still managed to find myself down here quite frequently. So much so that I could pretty much tell you how to get through this entire city and not even blink an eye, or even have to think about it. I'd just be like, oh yeah, you go down this way, go that way, and then you're there. Just because like I said, I spent so much time here that, I did live here, but we'll get to that in a second. After I left here in 2006, like I said, I went to Shenango Forks, and then after Shenango Forks, we went to Deposit, where my parents still are. And then 2015, I moved out of Deposit and moved back here to Binghamton, a very short distance from actually where I'm standing right now, which we will get to in about 10 or 15 minutes. From that location, I pretty much had the entire city to explore, which I did on a regular basis. I moved I believe I had 5 different apartments down here in Binghamton. And by the time I moved out of not only Binghamton, but I also moved out of Tioga County finally. I probably, I had spent, it didn't seem like it at the time, but I spent 4 years, the better part of 4 years, just everywhere in Binghamton. Now coming back around to the village, to the city itself, Binghamton is a very large area. I believe it's 11.16 square miles, which is freaking enormous. And it is pretty much split into 4 different directions. For the sake of not letting this video be longer than I want it to be, I'm just gonna cover downtown. So I'm pretty much gonna walk up and down Court Street, show you guys some of the areas, some of the places around here, talk about some of the locations, new and old, some of the things that I remember, and then we're gonna get back here probably, relatively shortly, and then I'm gonna go finish my errand running for the rest of the day. I mentioned a couple seconds ago, Binghamton was split. Binghamton is pretty much split into 4 directions. If you count downtown Binghamton, technically it's split into 5. So there's pretty much downtown Binghamton. There is the north side, the south side, the east side, and the west side. Somehow, in the whole time that I resided here, counting from 2004 to 2006, and then again from 2015 to 2019, I managed to live on 3 different sides of Binghamton. The only side of Binghamton that I did not actually know, I lived on 2 sides of Binghamton. The only 2 sides that I didn't live on were the south and west. I managed to live on the north and east. The latter of the 2 was where I spent from 2015 to 2019, and I had those 5 apartments. The north side, I had 1 house that I lived in with my parents for about 2.5 years before we moved out of the area. Being as downtown Binghamton pretty much is the center of everything, as Binghamton has been called, it is the center of the area that has been known as has come to be called the Binghamton metropolitan area, or Greater Binghamton. Most of everything that occurs in Binghamton usually happens right here in downtown. The good and the bad. Trust me, I know. Not to say that the 4 directions don't have their own, I guess you could say, special events about them. I mean, the north side of Binghamton has Sherry Lindsay Park. The south side of Binghamton has the Ross Park Zoo. The west side of Binghamton has the Binghamton Porch Fest. And the east side of Binghamton has the Mets Stadium. But there's just, I guess you could say there's just so much to do just in Binghamton alone, that when you think about it, and I will apologize for my language, ahead of time. But if Binghamton wasn't such a shithole, I actually wouldn't mind staying here. Not getting into my personal life too much, when I was forced to move out of Binghamton in 2019, I regretted leaving because I had so much here. I actually had a lot of friends. I had a few family members. I had pretty much anything that I wanted to do, I could do it whenever I wanted to do it. But because I made the decision to move out to Owego, I decided that it was time for me to start a new chapter and to pretty much forge my own path, which I think I've done pretty well for the last 5 years for myself. But I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, Binghamton was where it all started, pretty much. I mentioned a little while ago that even when I wasn't living here in Binghamton, I always found myself in Binghamton. And I will apologize ahead of time, just because of the area, you are going to hear a lot of sirens. Luckily for me, I've come used to it. It's not too many moments that go by that you're not hearing some kind of sirens, whether it be an ambulance, a fire truck, or a cop car just whizzing past you. So if you guys happen to hear that in the video, I do apologize ahead of time. But like I said, this is basically where it all started for me. And I'm actually pretty happy, for lack of a better term, happy of the fact that I was able to pretty much grow up around here. I'm not sure where I would be if I didn't grow up here. So that's pretty much all of that I got at the moment. So now we've reached the part of the video where I go around and tell you guys, I pretty much show you guys, the sights and sounds, for lack of the sirens, of course, of the area of Binghamton. So I mentioned in the beginning of the place that I was standing, and it's actually we're going to go down the road a little ways, not too far down the road, but we're actually going to go over here, and I'm going to show you guys, some of the area that I pretty much grew up in. So that's pretty cool. That must be new. Camera around so you guys can see. Over here across the street, we have the St. Mary's Episcopal Church, built June 4th of 1993. I know, I'm older than a church. Pains me to say that, but I actually laugh every time I go by that place, just because of the fact that the church was erected almost a whole year after I was born. And the thing still looks, the church still looks pretty damn good for being 31 years old. Yeah, 31. Damn, that hurts me to say. Actually, I am gonna walk down a little bit here. Down here on Court Street, like I said, is pretty much where I spent the majority of 2015 to 2019. And over here on the corner, we have an apartment building that I'm pretty sure is empty now. due to the construction on the building next to it, the former Sheltered Workshop of Binghamton. I actually have an ex-girlfriend that used to work there. And while I never went inside that workshop, because it has been closed for 13 years, she did work over in this other building, which I will get to in a second, and I actually got to go into that once or twice and, look around in there, and it was pretty nice. It was pretty nice. Definitely spared no expenses, and it was a nice place it was a nice area for, people with all sorts of disabilities to be able to go and work. So across that, we have the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, I just mentioned that building also used to be the Sheltered Workshop. The first building that I showed you actually closed down and then moved across the street. And then the Sheltered Workshop continues its activities in this building until the whole thing closed down, I think about like 10 or 11 years ago. And then the building, both buildings sat vacant until they decided to do something with them. I'm very glad that they decided to do what they did with it, just because Binghamton is a very, I guess you could say, veteran-oriented community. And just the fact that there is a place that they can go to get their services and to get their, the things that they need, actually, makes me feel pretty good. Down there on the corner, we have one of two gas stations in the area. The first of which is the Citgo, which until recently also used to be the site of the Courtesy Cab Company. As far as I know, the Courtesy Cab Company actually did go out of business, but I heard a rumor that the Courtesy Cab Company is supposed to be restarting under new ownership. Not sure when that is going to happen, but by all means, please let it happen. A little bit for the road, we have another building that is abandoned. Excuse me. Unfortunately, Binghamton does have a lot of abandoned buildings. I'm not gonna lie. And most of them, still not gonna lie, are former drug houses. Drug houses and just not good places to live, we'll say. There's actually an area that we will go to a little bit later that is pretty much full of, we'll say, bad houses, but they're trying, I hope. Binghamton really is trying to bring the area back to some livability. I mentioned a little while ago that there was a construction project going on in this building, the Sheltered Workshop. It is being transformed into apartments for veterans, seniors, and disabled people. And it's going to be called the Court Street Apartments. I know, real original. No word on when it's going to be completed. However, they have already removed most of the windows, and it doesn't look like they've started doing a lot of work inside. But I actually did just read an article yesterday that they have started working inside on other areas of the building. I'm excited, I'm not gonna lie, to see the progress of this building, just because, being a historian as I am, I don't like seeing vacant buildings. I feel like every single building, not just in a certain area or a certain state or a certain country, anywhere in the world, if the building has potential, use it to whatever means necessary. By whatever means necessary. Because you never know what you could get out of it. Okay? For example, the former sheltered workshop turned it into a VA. Use it. If you have the resources, use it. You'll be surprised at what you can come up with. Earlier I mentioned the Citgo. That was also home to the Courtesy Cab Company. And down that is the Mirabito gas station. And on the other side of that is the recently built Binghamton Fire Department. A long time ago, there actually used to be a fire station here in downtown Binghamton. Unfortunately, for reasons that I do not know, said fire station closed, and I believe is now a theater. I think it was something to do with funding or like lack of area. So the downtown Binghamton just hasn't had a fire station for the last I think it was about 25 years since that one closed. And then they finally built this one down here, I think last summer possibly. Spared no expenses. I believe it was a $4 or $5.6 million project. And they actually took down an old warehouse that was sitting on the corner to build the new fire station. Now, I had heard a rumor that they were going to also be demolishing the old Fairview Addiction Center and the vacant building next to it for parking for the fire department. But for whatever reason, those never came to fruition, and both buildings are still standing empty, as far as I know. Let me tell you, I try not to come down here very much, as previously mentioned, just because I'd rather not. Now, continuing to walk down the street, we actually are crossing over to the east side of Binghamton, which, as I mentioned before, is where I spent most of my time back in 2015. Now, as I stated, I don't really want to go to all the areas of Binghamton and just show you guys, because then the video would be like 2 hours long and I still got other stuff that I have to do. So I'm just kind of like walking around and, giving you guys a brief insight of, some of the area that I spent my time in. So I'm actually going to turn myself around and head back towards downtown. But as I'm walking, I will give you guys a little bit of a backstory of my own, seeing as how we were just facing that direction on the east side of Binghamton. When I first moved to the east side of Binghamton, I actually lived in an apartment which is kitty corner to the new fire station. I moved in with a friend of mine and I needed a job ASAP. Somehow I managed to go a little more than a month without getting a job, but I was meticulously putting in applications. which is where I got my first forte into McDonald's back in 2015. And it just kind of, got better from there, I guess. I spent pretty much the entire time that I lived over on the east side of Binghamton working at McDonald's back and forth. And I also spent a little bit of time working at Maine's as well, which was where I was when I left and went to Owego. So I'm definitely no stranger to the east side of Binghamton. As a matter of fact, the east side is probably, if I had to pick one, I would say the east side of Binghamton is my favorite side of Binghamton to live on. Unfortunately, it is not the safest. I found that out the hard way because being as the east side of Binghamton is so close to downtown, it's got a lot of crime, and I mean a lot. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's stabbings, shootings, drug busts, all that happy stuff. It all happens. The west side and the south side are pretty much the worst. The north side, not so much. The east side, nah. Depends on the day, I guess. But I guess you just gotta go with it and take everything with a grain of salt. Especially when you're walking around. Because unfortunately, you never know when it could be your last day or when it could be somebody else's. I completely skipped an entire area, the area that I'm actually parked in, but it's a good reason that I'm going back, and we're going to briefly talk about that as we continue walking down Court Street. Over here to my left is one of the historic buildings in Binghamton. Now, I will say, one of the most positive things that I can say about Binghamton, which is very rare because I can't say a lot of positive things about Binghamton, is the fact that Binghamton has a ton of history. And I mean a ton. The literal city itself is historic just because of the person that founded it. And it's amazing because everywhere you walk is some piece of history. At this building right here, the historic Phelps Mansion Museum, probably should zoom out a little bit. The Phelps Mansion Museum, which was built in memory of, I can't think of the guy's name, but it was something Phelps. He actually lived here back in the 1800s, and when he died, he left his house as a museum to show the he left his house as a museum to the city of Binghamton to showcase its history and some of the history in the area. Over here next to that, we actually have the Binghamton Library, also known as the Jeffrey P. Cram Library, I think it's called. One of the very few places in Binghamton that I actually spent a lot of time. Somehow, when I was down here, I always found myself here. Great place to go if you ever want to just read. They are not picky, and if you just go in there, grab a book and start reading, they won't bother you. Just don't try to check it out if you don't live in the area, because then you'll get some crap. across the street here, we have the recently switched over Guthrie Binghamton Mental Health. Excuse me. Which up until very recently, going back to the construction project, I did not know that clinic actually used to be a Weis Market, or a Giant Market, whatever you want to call it, back in the day. Which is fascinating, because if you look around, there's not many Giant and Weis Markets left in the area, but to say that that used to be one is actually pretty awesome. Over here on the left, we have the AVRE, the Association for Vision Rehabilitation and Employment. I think they work with blind people and rehabilitate them to get them back out in the workforce and back to a sustainable living. Now, I'm not much for poking my head into places, but walking past the Broome County Library, you can see, obviously, I have a lot of books on the shelf, and obviously it's Sunday, so they are closed, but like I said a little while ago, many hours in that library doing absolutely nothing but just picking up a book and reading. Part of me wishes I could get back to those days, but it's probably a good thing that I didn't. I have picked up reading again as a hobby, but until certain other things start to go differently, I'm just going to do it as a side thing and work my way back into it from there. I mean, like, the library is massive. I'll be the first to tell you that. This library is massive. It was actually built. It was built in 2000, which it moved from the previous location, which we will go past in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Over here is an old bar. For the life of me, I don't remember what the name was, but obviously, as you can see, it's closed. It's really a good thing. Binghamton doesn't really need any more crap down here than it already has. I want to tell you guys real quick, we actually were right near the old, or not the old, but the Marabito Stadium, which is actually home to the Binghamton Rumble Ponies and the, obviously the baseball games in the area. Earlier, I mentioned the old fire station. That is actually it, right there in the distance. It was known as the Central Fire Station, and as I said, I don't know why it closed or when it closed, but I'm pretty sure it's now known as the No Theater, and I'm not sure if they still do performances and stuff there, but I do know that it's a destination for the area. Over here we have a former recycling corporation, which is now Prime Care Coordination. I have no idea what it is. I think it has something to do with like mental health or something. This used to be the old MAST building, Mental Health Association of the Southern Tier, and they actually moved their location over to the east side of Binghamton back in 2017 when they outgrew this building. Luckily for them, they decided to keep the building in use and I believe it still has use to this day. Over to my left, we have a couple little places. We have Alex's Lottery Newsstand, little convenience store and smoke shop. We have a barber shop. We have the very famous Rolando's Diner. I will tell you, I have eaten there 3 times and I've never been disappointed with their food. I would like to go there again at some point, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. Earlier, I had mentioned that Binghamton is a very historic town. If you look on some buildings that span the village, or the city I should say, you'll notice that a lot of them have a name on them and then a year on them. Each one of those buildings basically signifies the person that built it and the year that it was built, which is awesome because people come here, and I am not exaggerating this, people come here from everywhere, whether it be north, south, east, west, wherever. They come here to Binghamton and they just look around at all the history that is here, and apparently that's what makes them want to stay. I personally think they're fools, but to each their own. Now, down there, I believe is the, well, actually we'll get to that a little bit later, because I'm actually going to loop around to head back to my car here in about 10 minutes, but we'll keep walking down Court Street. I'll show you guys some of the sights and sounds. So some more of the sights and sounds. Over here, right, is the Chemung Canal Trust Company, one of the local banks in the area. Obviously, they're closed because it's Sunday. And yeah, pretty much all I got to say about that. Over here is, I don't know what this used to be, but I do know that it is now senior housing, and it's known as the Lofts at 123 Court. If you look up, you can see that there is a series of apartments up on top of the building, and this other side was supposed to be turned into a restaurant, and for whatever reason it never happened. So it just kind of is used as storage for the college housing, and I personally feel like it's falling to the wayside. This building here on my right, I believe used to be another restaurant, and I don't know if I could see inside. No, it's pretty dark in there, but they've got it basically closed up. It's pretty much been closed for like a million years, hypothetically, of course. But oh, it used to be a rug shop. If you guys look up, it actually still says the rug shop where it used to be. Pretty obvious to see that they went out of business. Right next to that is a place called the Mediterranean Garden Restaurant and Buffet. Also used to be a place called Argo and Throwbacks, but like most places in this area, also gone out of business. I think they got hit pretty hard with COVID, and they decided to close and decided to never reopen. Probably a good thing. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sad to say that since then, the building has kind of fallen into disarray, and nobody's really done anything with it, as far as like preservation and restoration. Right here we have the historic Lane building. I believe this is a series of corporate offices, for things in the area, and obviously they're closed too because it's Sunday. Over here we have the historic Security Mutual building, which was built way back when and actually got a revitalization back in the early 2000s. Beautiful building, I'm not gonna lie. Way too high for my standards, but beautiful nonetheless. Over here we have the Waldron building, another corporate office building in Binghamton. It was built in 1895 and it was restored by Security Mutual all the way back in 1992. Coincidence, because that's the year I was born. Right here next to it, very good shop known as Gennarelli's Flowers and Gifts. I have been in there twice. Haven't been in there recently, but I have been in there twice. Beautiful flowers, great prices, nice selections. Definitely recommend it if you ever get the chance. Walking further down, we have another set of apartments that obviously go all the way up there. And it seems to be a lot of them. Over here, we have a new restaurant, at least new to me. I don't think it's a restaurant though. I think it might be a gift shop. It's known as Kicks Off Court. Not sure what it is. Like I said, it looks like it's a gift shop or something, or apparel store or something like that. Pretty recent, because last time I remember that was a coffee shop. We have another apartment building entrance, and then we have a restaurant known as PS Restaurant downtown. Very beautiful on the inside. I haven't been in here, but I do hear a lot of good things about, the area. As far well, the food, I hear a lot of good things about. Got another entrance here, and then we have another cafe known as Chroma Cafe and Bakery, and then another apartment entrance, and then here, this right here, I wouldn't say is a favorite of mine, but definitely I don't dislike it. This building right here is the former First National Bank of Binghamton. Now, the bank was opened as a bank. I believe it was all the way back in the early 1900s, and actually went out of business. I think it was a little less than 30-some years ago. And since then, they have been trying to do something with this building to keep it preserved, because it is listed as a historic property. Now, unfortunately, they've never been able to keep anything, and I mean anything, in here. Recently, they decided that this building was deemed unsafe for living and decided to condemn it, which is very unfortunate, because when they did get places to go in here, the places were extremely happy, because they had finally found a location that they could be at that they thought nobody was going to bother them. Gotta love the city of Binghamton, because they were wrong. When the building was condemned, unfortunately all the places were forced to evacuate, and since then the building has remained boarded up, and it doesn't look like it's ever going to be opening up again. At the top of the building, it says the First National Bank was founded in 1863, and the building itself was erected in 1929. I believe it was closed in 1977. I could be wrong, but it's a damn shame, because it was a great It was a great place. Obviously, if you come down here, Binghamton doesn't really have a lot of banks, or at least downtown doesn't anyway. But you know, it was a nice place to have. Not to mention the architectural. Like, how often do you see a giant bank on the corner, the literal corner of a busy street? You don't. And speaking of busy, historically architectural buildings, I want to show you guys this. This is known as the Perry Building, built by famed Binghamton architect Isaac J. Perry, all the way back in the 1800s. Isaac Perry was an architect who designed 90% of the buildings down here in Binghamton. Over here, right next to the Security Mutual, you have the former Binghamton Public Library, which was built by him. Obviously, his namesake building behind was built by him. And also, the very famous Binghamton Courthouse was also built by him. So this guy pretty much has his mark on everything down here, just because of how amazing he was. And a lot of people say that they wish he was still around. Obviously, he wouldn't be, because he'd be over 100 years old, but if he was still around, he would be able to see what his buildings have turned into in such a short time. Over here, we have a place called Calzone. It's Calzone Bros. They must have recently changed their name, because last time I knew they were End Zones. Calzone pizzas, stuff like that. That's your place to go. Over here, next to it, we have a place called Just Breathe, which was one of the first pot shops to open up in Binghamton. I've been in there twice. Being as the fact that I don't smoke anymore, didn't buy anything. I just went in there to look around. Down here, we have the former They went out of business again? Oh, the former Spotlight, which also used to be known as Merlin's, a club that I've visited twice in my life, and let me tell you, I had some fun. Over here, we have a place called Sakatumi, a sushi bar, restaurant, and lounge. Never been there. I'll be the first to admit it. I've never been there, but I have it on my to-do list so that I could go there eventually. Over here across the street, we have two more historic buildings. The former Citizens Bank and the former FCU, which is now Community Bank and Broadview Federal Credit Union. And then we have this absolutely beautiful vacant lot. I'm not sure how you could say beautiful and vacant lot in the same sentence, but I just did it. About 5 years ago, there was actually a plan to build a Visions Federal Credit Union right here in this area. And for whatever reason, the city of Binghamton turned it down, citing a lack of interest, I guess, and the fact that it would take too much to redevelop the area, which that part they're not wrong of, but I'm glad they didn't do that. Over here we have Miriam's Taste of Halal, which is a smoke shop, convenience store, pretty much everyday thing, I guess you could call it. Over here we have the recently opened The Groove. I hear really good things about this place. I still haven't been there, but I'm going to put it on my to-do list at some point. Eventually. Not sure when that's going to be, but it'll be soon, I hope.
Let me know.
street here. Not such a good example for the kids, but that's all right. Over here on my right, we have the local radio station, the Whale, the Hawk, WNBF. Pretty much self-explanatory. It's a radio station. Over here on my left, we have a couple of the local businesses. We have Muckles, we have Dapper Rascal Barbershop, we have the recently opened Iron Aguave. Can't remember what kind of food they have, but I hear really good things about that. And then we have the also recently opened Courtside Bar and Grill. I hear a lot of good things about that as well. Still need to put it on my to-do list, but it'll happen someday. Right next to that, we have the Saul Stearns, clothiers since 1929. Over here on my right, we have the Keller Williams Real Estate Agency, their local office of Binghamton. And also, we have another historic building, which I'm going to step into the road to show you guys. We have the City National Bank. All the way up at the top, it says, this bank, organized July 29th, 1852, has occupied this building since 1855. Which is very, very awesome, because that's almost 200 years that this has been a building. Now, unfortunately, it's a bank anymore. I'm honestly not sure what it is. I guess it's a place called Logo Wise, and it states that you can get to it through the Metro Center, but obviously ain't nobody got time for that. Speaking of the Metro Center, I'll show you guys this neat little alleyway down here. This whole area recently got refurbished, and it looks beautiful. It looks a lot better than it used to, and it actually used to have its own Binghamton Walk of Fame, kind of like the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but in Binghamton. And for some reason they took it out. I don't know why, but it was really nice. And you know, this whole alleyway back here is just historic in its own right. I mean, it's got a Visions Federal Credit Union out of nowhere that nobody really knows about, which is probably why they didn't build one on the corner. It's got the historic Metro Center, and it's got a place called Los Amigos. I think it says Latin. Let's see. That's the business. And then it has the Ellis Brothers Grocery Store, which also isn't in business, because they now have a location on the corner that they recently that they acquired within the last I think 10 or 15 years. What's really funny about this alleyway is that sign for Phil's Gift Shop has been up there since the store has been there, and the business has been closed for about 20 years. But they still haven't taken that sign down, which is really weird. I think they should take that sign down. Just saying. Over here we have the former Galaxy Brewing Company, which recently closed its doors. Again, another location that pretty much lost itself to the effects of COVID and decided that they were going to close their doors. Very sad to see them go, just because, you know, it's a nice area, and I didn't even tell you guys yet, this area is very, very popular among the college students, and so much so that a lot of the apartments that are up here are student housing. As you can see, those signs over. that clearly say student rental. Now, I am very much, I can't say I'm against student housing, but I feel like this area wouldn't be as popular if it wasn't for the college students. Just now, being as we're coming towards the end of the video, I actually went longer than I was hoping to go, but I guess that's what happens when you you just start talking. I want to show you a really special place to me. This place is known as Imagica, and up until recently they only had a small shop down on one of the side streets, and they ended up buying both of these places and pretty much making a walkway between the two. The owner, really nice guy. He's pretty much amazing. They sell like crystals, tapestries, stuff like that. If you're into like all that goth stuff and like supernatural witchcrafts and stuff like that, this is your place. I want to show you guys all of these shops over here. Down there we got the China One, we got Friends Groceries, we got the Adoke Food Mart, recently opened. We have Sugar Mountain, which is the other local pot shop. We also have the former CVS, and we also have previously mentioned the Ellis Brothers Furniture. Over here we have the Juicery, try saying that 10 times fast. And then we also have the Jog 33 downtown, which used to be the Gaslight Gym. I almost got a membership there, but I didn't because I knew I wasn't going to be staying in Binghamton. We have a place here called the Dollhouse, which is basically your local spa, I guess you could call it. And then we have the an old beauty shop that's no longer in business. We have the downtown discount beer and market. Never been in there, probably never will be. And then we have downtown discount liquors, which only opened 4 years ago. Over here you got the Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and then right here on the corner we have our last attraction, the Boscov's, the only department store in downtown Binghamton. Now, I have spent quite a bit of time in that Boscov's, and I am always fascinated every time I go there, just because of the fact that when you go in there, you find stuff you don't think you need, but then you say, oh, I do need this, so why don't I buy it? So it's really nice. I want to send a congratulations to Boscov's. They just recently were able to secure a 10-year contract extension on the lease for this building, which means that they will be in this location until 2034. Hopefully, when that lease runs up, they can renew it for another 10 years and continue, basically continue their legacy. Down here on my right, we have the Nurchi's Pizza, which I think is closed. Maybe not. But they, if you don't know anything about Nurchi's, you should probably start doing your research, just because Nurchi's is an amazing place. Hands down, the #1 pizza place in all of Broome County. Very sad to say that Tioga County doesn't have any, but that's probably a good thing. Over here is the former location of the Water Street Brewing Company. Now, the Water Street Brewing Company was open up until very recently, and for whatever reason they decided to go out of business. I guess, financial woes forced them to close, and I never got the chance to go there. Probably a good thing. I didn't really want to, but it's sad when a business that has been around for so long ends up closing so abruptly. Over here, now another reason why I'm very happy about the Boscovs extending their contract lease is this. The brand new, not open yet, probably won't be for another 3 or 4 months, but the brand new Water Street garage. This is a $44 million project. Now, for those of you who know anything about Binghamton, there used to be another garage here. It was old, dilapidated, needed to be replaced, and they finally did it. Unfortunately, what they want to do with this garage, what they wanted to do with this garage that they're building, is that they wanted to put apartments right up there. The city of Binghamton said no, and probably for good reason, because if they did that, that building would be taller than any other building, in almost as tall as every other building in the area. And the last thing anybody wanted, or would have wanted, I should say, is to have apartments above a garage next to a department store. Granted, it probably would have been good for the department store revenue, but ain't nobody got time for that. Let's see what else I got for you guys. I mean, I can't say I feel bad, because this video is already over an hour, and it's getting really close to the time that I have to go pick up my fiance. And I do have to head back to my car so that I can go get her. But there is so much more that I want to talk about in Binghamton. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if Binghamton wasn't such a shithole, I wouldn't mind being here. And it's not even like, well, I can't say that Binghamton is a bad place. It has its moments. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Most of the time it's pretty bad. Obviously with the criminal activity and the, I guess you could say the overabundance of college students, it's pretty bad. But as a whole, Binghamton is phenomenal. As far as a place to live, things to do, places to go, historic, it pretty much has it all. But then there's that dark side of Binghamton that you just can't get away from. Part of the reason I decided to move out of Binghamton is because I didn't want to deal with all of the criminal activity. And I definitely told myself when I was living here that I did not want to raise kids here, because of the fact that I would fear for them every single day. And I'm glad, very, very glad, that back in 2019 I decided that I was not going to stay here anymore. I was not going to raise a family in an area that was not safe. And I feel like I made the right decision. So, in closing, like I said, I can't say I dislike Binghamton. I can say I dislike Binghamton. I will say it till my face turns blue, because I dislike Binghamton very much. I dislike Binghamton to the point that I wish something would be done for it, just to alleviate some of the criminal activity that is basically plaguing the area. If you could deal with that, then you would pretty much have a decent place to live. But what I do want to say about Binghamton is, even though combined between the 2 times that I lived here, I only lived here for 7 years, I pretty much spent a good 23 years of my life in and out of this area. And let me tell you, I have seen it all. And I mean that in every sense of the word. I have seen it all. I've seen hit and runs. I've seen people stabbed. I've seen house fires. I've seen shootings. I've seen robberies. I've seen dilapidated buildings. I mean, hell, Columbus Learning Center, that side of town, I've seen a lot. I mentioned earlier in the video that there's pretty much an entire street that is just nothing but empty buildings, empty vacant buildings. And it's very sad, because the last time I was down here in the area, I basically said to myself, what the hell is happening to this area? Why is it that you go anywhere and you have some places that look really, really nice, and then you have some places that are shit? And I never get an answer. I never get an answer, just because. Part of me doesn't want an answer, because I don't live here anymore, and I have nothing but memories here, and memories are a good thing, because then when you get older, you can look back and you can be like, oh, I remember this, or oh, I remember that, and you could feel good about yourself. I mean, I've managed to wander over to Henry Street, and speaking of memories, I remember about 10-15 years ago, my aunt and uncle used to live in a house down here on Henry Street, and they had lived there for I don't know how long, quite a few years. And recently, earlier this year, the house that they lived in burnt to the ground. Well, okay, it didn't actually burn to the ground, but it burnt enough that it's not livable anymore. As a matter of fact, they recently tore it down. And then not even 3 weeks later, the 2 places next to it both caught fire under mysterious circumstances. Me personally, because I know this area so well, I said it was arson. And nobody's ever confirmed or denied it. As a matter of fact, it's to the point now where nobody will even talk about it. Just because, apparently from what they're saying is it doesn't need to be talked about. Everybody knows. But what I find extremely ironic, and I use this word loosely, what I find extremely ironic about that particular place that my aunt and uncle used to live in and the two buildings next to it is that is not the first arson-related fire that has happened over on that side on Henry Street. Back in 2000, I believe it was 2006. I want to say it was 2016. It was the year after I moved down here. There was another building, which I find extremely ironic. I was staying in for a while with a friend of mine. I lived with her and my other friend for about 2 months, I think it was, I stayed with them. Back in 2016, that building also burnt to the ground. And I find it ironic how I spent a lot of time in both of those buildings and they've both since burnt to the ground. It just makes you wonder what is happening to this area. Is it a grudge of somebody in the area, or is it just a grudge of somebody in general that these buildings, for lack of a better term, have to be ruined? I mean, I was gonna walk down by the old Columbus School and show you guys all the vacant buildings in that area, but obviously I don't have time for that. But what is happening? And is it ever going to get better? Is Binghamton ever going to get back to a point where people can walk around here and not fear for their lives? I know me personally, I can't stand walking around here. That's why I carry 3 knives in my back pocket. Just because if somebody decides to feel froggy, by all means, jump. But I want other people to be able to walk around and not fear for their life. I'm used to it just because of the fact that I lived here. I know what it's like. I know what it was like. And I would like it to get better. So, I would like to close out this video by saying my announcements. First, this being as I have finished my trilogy, this will be my final Broome County location. Because of the fact that after this, I will be going back west. And I will be going to Tioga County, Cortland County, and the surrounding areas that way. Hopefully by the end of the summer, I will have managed to get all the way down to, all the way up to Syracuse. And maybe, just maybe, I will be able to do a video at the mall. So that is all I have for you guys today. But that is definitely not the end of the adventure. Because as long as there is breath in this body, the adventure will continue. So I will see you on the next trip to the pond.